Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Thursday, July 18th, 2013. I'm Darko, my website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. Thanks for joining me. If you are new, I'm going to cover the war on terror, liberty, sovereignty, basically Middle East, but also Asia, and here and at the homeland, as they call it, right? Because this is our homeland. Alright, the first article I have for you is U.S. preparing for military action in Syria, says top U.S. general. Obama is considering using military force in Syria, and the Pentagon has prepared various scenarios for possible U.S. intervention. This Martin Dempsey, Army general, and as chairman of Joint Chief of Staff, said the Obama regime is deliberating whether or not it should use the brute of the U.S. military in Syria during a Thursday morning Senate hearing. Dempsey said the administration was considering using kinetic strikes, so here we hear that kinetic word again, in Syria, and said issue is under deliberation inside of our agencies, in the agencies of our government. So this is kind of big news because before they were definitely not considering it, and now they're definitely considering it. And the situation's bad there. You had one Al-Qaeda, you had, was it Al-Qaeda, one of the Al-Qaeda offshoots, or Al-Qaeda, I don't know if it was Al-Nasra or whatever, but basically assassinated the FSA head. So now it's getting pretty bad, and you'll see as I move on in this video. But kinetic strikes, that's not a good, you don't want to hear that if you're a Syrian, a sovereign Syrian, not these foreign jihadists that are in there are wreaking havoc, because that means drone bombs, that means no-fly zones, really bad news. Militants shell a school in Syria, and there's 3 killed, foreign-backed militants in Syria. It's funny because they're foreign-backed and they're foreigners in Syria, have fired a mortar shell on a school in western city of Homs, killing at least 3 civilians and injuring several others. Another shell also fell in the vegetable market in Al-Qadr neighborhood, including injuring 1 civilian and causing damage to cars and nearby buildings. It's going to move faster because they have a lot to get to. Syrian politician Jamo assassinated in southern Lebanon. So he was 44 years old, and he was fatally shot at close range by an automatic assault rifle inside the sitting room on the ground floor in his 3-story house. I believe he was shot like 16 times, if I remember it correctly. But it says here that he often appeared on Arab TV stations as a political analyst. He's one of the strongest defenders of Syrian sovereignty. The latest appearance on Al Manar TV was during the program, whatever that is, 4 days ago on Saturday 13th. He's also the head of the political and international relations divisions. So that was a big blow right there. That was assassination, probably Mossad, just saying, you know. UK to spend £650,000 providing Syrian rebel fighters with hoods that protect against chemical weapons. This is pretty interesting. So they said they could, the so-called escape hoods would be sent to moderate forces, in quotes, just like all the aid and guns are going to, quote, moderate forces. I guess that's supposed to be the FSA within the opposition, along the tablets that combat the symptoms of nerve agents and type of paper that can detect chemical weapons. So again, part of these rebels, the opposition, have been responsible for the chemical attacks. Of course, they're blaming it on the Syrian government, which that is not true. I've shown this to not be true with different evidence in articles, because it's a matter of special urgency, the government says, as there was evidence the Syrian President Assad was using chemical weapons in the conflict. So they're using them, and they know that they're using them, and they're trying to protect their mercenaries. That came from what? The Independent, so you know it's crap. Britain's chemical sales to Syria revealed. So again, more propaganda. They're building up for another chemical attack. So again, I know Syrians probably aren't listening to this, but they need to be very careful and aware right now. Britain's chemical sales to Syria revealed. Britain has approved more than $12 billion in military sales to countries it condemns for human rights abuses, including Syria. So they're putting this out there as if, oh yeah, see, we sold Syria chemical weapons. See, that's more proof that they're using it. Just recently, Russia says it was the Syrian rebels who used chemical weapons. So they say after refusing to buy U.S. evidence because it was, what, unconvincing. So they don't agree on the source. Well, I wouldn't agree with it because, what, we saw the email, right? We saw the little email that came out that basically talked about how the State Department was molding the idea of unleashing chemical weapons and chemical weapons of mass destruction, or not really mass destruction, but just chemical weapons, and they were going to blame it on the Syrian government. So yeah, I wouldn't consider that to be a convincing argument either. Syrian rebels caught with Syrian gas in Turkey. This is from June 5th, 2013. They reportedly have been detained in Turkey with cylinders of highly poisonous Syrian gas found in their possession. There you go. Several people killed in the Syria car bomb blast. This is just recently. Several people, including women and children, have been killed in a car bomb attack in the Syrian town of Kanakar. Also, I said that if you've been watching these videos, you know that the Syrian government was really winning. It was pretty clear about in the, I'd say prior to the last week and a half, it was very well known internationally that the Syrian government was winning. So now you're hearing about an actual ground troops invasions. Now you're hearing about this chemical attack. They're already laying the groundwork to blame it on the Syrian governments. I said that they were going to try to bleed them. With starving them of fuel, with food or medical supplies. These foreign terrorists have been holding these cities that have been secured by the government, and they're holding them hostage or holding them siege, and are not allowing anything to get in. Sound familiar? Like Israel and Gaza? So pretty messed up stuff. The Syrian government can only do so much. They don't have the ability to cover the entire country, so they have to, quote, cleanse or secure a position or secure a city, and then they go to one part and one part, so they're constantly going from one to the other. That's how they've been successful, but they're just trying to overwhelm them right now, the West. Syrian rebels capture Israeli army post. No injuries reported. Rebel fighters from an unidentified faction have crossed the disengagement line between Syria and Israeli-occupied Golan, captured an unmanned army post, sparking a clash with Israeli patrols nearby. The rebels are speculated to have taken the post to provoke Syrian troops to return fire against them across the ceasefire line, sparking Israeli retaliation. So you see that these people really are working for it, whether they know it or not. Rebel group won't fight Israel if it enters Syria. This is just June 20th, a month ago. We'll leave the fighting to Hezbollah and Assad's men, says spokesman. So that's what they said. Rebel group won't fight Israel if it enters Syria. Al-Qaeda versus FSA declaring Islamic State. Says the battles between the different factions of the armed Syrian opposition raged recently, mainly between the FSA and Al-Qaeda, which will declare its state in northern Syria. So they quote a senior leader in the Free Syrian Army that Al-Qaeda will announce its Islamic State in the north of Syria after defeating the FSA rebels and controlling the crossings that connect Syria and Turkey. UN says Syria is the new Rwanda. Well, this is the point, right? If there's no more Syrians and there's just jihadists and they're holding cities at hostage, and Obama or UK and all these people that have crocodile tears and say, oh, this is just horrible, the civil war. Well, they're causing this, and they're causing this chaos, and they can stop it. But they don't want it. They want to bleed Syria until there's actually no more national Syrians left. It's the worst crisis since 1994. UN envoy says Iraq and Syrian wars are merging, not just spill over anymore. Officials say, I've covered before about how Iraqis have been actually fighting in Syria to protect a mosque, and that some people say, well, that's not really true. They're just there to fight. Well, they've blown up mosques. They've blown up a couple of them and destroyed them. These holy, basically sacred mosques for them. It also has to do with what? Fault line between Shia and the Sunni world, which, again, this is by design. Syrian Kurds battle al-Qaeda-linked Islamists for control of oil fields. Kurdish fighters have seized control of a Syrian town on the border with Turkey and are battling Islamist rebel groups linked to al-Qaeda for control of the oil fields in the north of the country. So, pretty interesting, right? And you hear people say, well, this isn't about resources. It's always about resources. So it's about refugees, but a lot of times it's about resources. And just like Libya, remember the first thing they did in Iraq, they maintained control. They took control of the oil fields in Iraq. Libya took control of the oil fields. They started pumping oil. The terrorists. It's unbelievable. Militants attack fuel pipelines in southern Syria. So this is in southern Syria. Foreign-backed militants in Syria have blown up gas and fuel pipelines that feed power stations in the country's south, causing a blackout. That means these people that are there in their houses are roasting. It is the hottest part of the year probably for them, and they have no AC or nothing. Speaking of the oil fields, how are these terrorists setting them up right away? Well, it just goes to show you there's probably either agents, or these people are being trained by some type of agencies to do what they're doing. Egypt's Sinai offensive may fuel unrest in Gaza. Well, that's the purpose. Israel praises moves against terror, but the junta may be creating more problems. So two things with the Egyptian regime change. They keep calling it a coup. Regime change is what it should be called. Was one was that basically the Egyptian regime wasn't supporting the West against Syria enough. You just heard a kind of half-empty, half-hearted statement by Morsi maybe 2-3 weeks prior to him being overthrown about how he was cutting off ties with Syria. So he wasn't anti-Syria enough. Also, when you check out the map and stuff like that, basically this is a kind of not a key area, but it's just another way of creating instability in the region. Okay, so moving on here, we have here unprecedented strain on Israel-EU ties. It says here Netanyahu responds to EU saying Israel will not tolerate external edicts on our borders. Basically, they're trying to approve another 100 whatever settlements. We will catch you, says IDF. They issued wanted posters for Palestinian kids. So they're the infamous throwing of the rocks right against tanks who mow them down or whatever, beat them. So posters say, "We are the army. Be careful. We will catch you if we see you." So one person said, "We got very afraid when they put our pictures up. They are threatening that they will arrest us and they will come and take us from our homes." So it's the youth. I mean, they know what they're fighting for, and it's like I said, it's they kill a lot of the men, and that's the resistance with freaking rocks. So, and this is what people like this in the U.S. and Obama and all the prior presidents support. UN ambassador nominee. It's genocide is what's happening. UN ambassador nominee Samantha Power criticizes world body's unacceptable anti-Israeli bias. She said here that America enjoys a special relationship with Israel, whose legitimacy should be beyond dispute, and its security must be beyond doubt. So you can't question it, right? That's what I was talking about. You can't question this. Watch my video yesterday about the Hermit Cave sessions, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Obama's UN pick vows push for Israeli seat on Security Council, so they want to help the Israeli regime win a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Viewers see events in Egypt as critical to U.S. interests. Interest in Egypt news has plummeted since the Arab Spring, from 46 to 36% as far as it being very important, but it doesn't really matter because this is a completely propped up government with the military. Egyptian army's firepower overwhelmingly U.S. supplied. Much like Israel, people should be thinking it's very important because you're sending money over there while they're cutting certain programs and stuff like that. They're sending money to Israel and Egypt, foreign governments like that. Iran's next president faults Ahmadinejad economy. My only comment on this is, what the hell are you talking about? You're surrounded by sanctions. I'm surprised Iran has been as successful as they have with all the sanctions that they have on them. So I don't understand that statement. But it says Saudi's unprecedented break with Washington over Egypt. He said before, the king's probably on his deathbed or in a coma. It says here, one of the least commented aspects of the ousting of Egypt's Morsi is that fine act of the Saudi royal house is backing the ouster of the Brotherhood and supporting the military restoration. So it says here, the move is unprecedented and it's open defiance of the White House declared backing for the Muslim Brotherhood. It said the implications of the split are huge. I just covered this before. A report says Saudi Arabia points missiles at Israel and Iran. Why? Because if Israel forces them to attack Iran and they don't, Israel could attack them or attack, whatever their interests. So they want to attack Israel. And why are they pointing at Iran? Well, in case Israel gets them to force them to attack Iran along with them. That was from July 11th. Beach storming drill in U.S. hones SDF amphibious edge. So a lot of amphibious drills. 1,000 members of the self-defense forces have been learning how to recapture territory in the face of enemy, while the shoreline of California, the skills they're building could one day be used closer to home. Well, what type? Army apologizes for scary choppers in Port Angeles. Received an apology for a nighttime training exercise of the week that says it was terrorized my city with low-flying helicopters. So that's the point, to make it realistic. West Virginia dismisses false flag allegations. Basically, the National Guard training exercise taking place at the same time as a National Boy Scout Jamboree. So it's taking place from the 14th to the 26th. Based off a Nevada governor, information has led him to believe that the Jamboree could be the scene of a next false flag event carried out they say by the U.S. government, but you know who it's going to be by. You know Russia has been carrying out the biggest military drills since the Soviet Union. It's to simulate a response to a hypothetical attack by Japanese and U.S. forces. Japan plans to nationalize 400 unclaimed islands. This is part of the territorial dispute with China. China's ships sail near disputed islands, says Japan. Air Force drone crashes and explodes in Florida, shutting down a highway. A Colorado town considers licensing bounty hunters to shoot down drones. The last comment is, as far as Russia and China and World War, I don't really think there's any sovereign nations left. I think they're all run by Jewish banking interests. But if they do carry out a war, it will kill whatever national sovereignty is left. Thank you.